r/ProRevenge. First story. Build a driveway across someone else's property without permission? Pay the price. Not sure if this is pro enough, but here goes. I was visiting my friend at his dad's house in an area where the land is so steep all the driveways have to switch back up from the main road to the houses. A straight driveway is not an option because it would be steeper than the building code allows. A few doors down the road there lived a nice old couple who until recently had a vacant lot next door to them, but the lot had sold and the new owner had started construction on a new house. Unfortunately the lot was so steep that the new owner built his driveway partly on the old couple's land. It was carved out of the hillside with an excavator. This probably wouldn't have been a big deal if the new owner had approached the old couple first and asked nicely, but did he? Would I be telling this story if he had? In fact, the old couple had no idea what was happening until they came home one day to see a huge scar in the hillside snaking up from the road in front of their house, across the corner of their property, and winding upwards to where an excavator was working to prepare the land for their new neighbor's house. They were pretty upset, but being nice reasonable people, they figured it was an honest mistake, so they went over to talk to the machine operator. He didn't know anything useful, but he was happy to give them the phone number of the new property owner. The old guy gave him a call and politely explained the situation, but his new neighbor, whom he'd never even met, was having none of it. He flat out denied that the driveway crossed the property line, and he was rude enough that the old guy was pretty upset. At this point the old couple weren't sure what to do. They double checked the property pins to make sure they were right, and of course they were, but after further conversations with the new owner it was clear he was an unreasonable guy who wasn't going to come to the negotiating table willingly. The old couple didn't want to take legal action because that would have been expensive, and, frankly, the damage to their yard was already done. At the same time, they couldn't just let someone walk all over them like that, especially if they were going to be living next door for the foreseeable future. So the situation stewed for a while as construction continued on the new house, until one day when my friend's dad saw the old couple in the neighborhood and they started chatting. Of course they told him the story about the asshole new neighbor. Now, my friend's dad really likes the old couple, who don't have a mean bone in their bodies, so he was pretty pissed about the situation, and when he went home he couldn't get it out of his head. That evening, after a few beers, he had a brilliant idea. He called up the old couple, explained his plan, and asked for their permission to carry it out. They chuckled and gave him the go-ahead, so he hopped into the rusty old full-size pickup he kept as a second vehicle and drove it over to the old couple's place, where he parked it across the encroaching driveway, making sure it was entirely on their property. The next morning the work crew arrived bright and early to find that they couldn't drive to the house they were building because some jackass had parked a shitty old F-150 across the driveway. They saw the note in the window with my friend's dad's phone number on it, so they called him to ask WTF. He explained that he had permission from the owners to park there and that, no, he would not move his truck so they could get to work. Furthermore, if anyone attempted to tow the truck they would be charged with trespassing and theft. There was no way the construction guys were going to haul all their tools up the hill by hand, and they didn't want to get in the middle of a legal battle, so they just called the new owner to let him know they'd be taking the day off, and that they'd continue to take days off until the property boundary dispute was resolved. The new owner called the old couple in a fury, but the old couple told them the same thing my friend's dad told the construction workers. Basically, the vehicle was parked on their own property, so if he had a problem with that he could go fuck himself. To make an already long story shorter, the new neighbor anted a while, but eventually he wanted his house to be built, so the nice old couple ended up with a significant sum of money in exchange for an easement allowing the driveway to pass across the corner of their property, and my friend's dad got several thank you cases of beer and the satisfaction that comes from putting an asshole in his place. Edits. Phrasing. This occurred in a small town in Canada. For those who think I made it up, thanks for thinking I'm so clever, but judging by the number of similar stories in the comments and people asking if this was next town, I think this happens pretty often, not too surprising considering the number of houses built each year in the world. Regarding the legal questions and comments, the reason the guy built the driveway where he did was because it was cheaper and easier than making it all on his land, not because there was no other option, so most of your points, if not all, are moot. I'm on mobile so can't paint a picture, but imagine two lots next to each other on the uphill side of a road with the property boundary perpendicular to the road. The older couple live on the left. When you're looking uphill, the new driveway is for the property on the right, and it snakes up the hill in a, roughly, S shape. The bottom 50 feet or so of the driveway crosses the old couple's land to reach the road. I'm not sure if any trees were harmed in the making of this post. The driveway was done by the time I saw it, but the couple didn't make that an issue, so I suspect not. Yes, my friend's dad drove after drinking a few beers. Every hero has his flaw. Thanks for reading. TLDNR, neighbor built a driveway across someone else's land without permission and wouldn't compensate them for it, so they parked a truck across it to block access to his land until he would negotiate. Second story. While we are on the subject of homeowners associations, here's a story of how my parents' HOA tried to use a 40-year-old rule to stop them from repairing hurricane damage and got the shaft for their trouble. A few months back, as you all may remember, Florida got pretty beaten up by a couple of hurricanes. My folks lived down there, and while none of the damage that they sustained was life-alteringly horrible or home-destroying, homeowners insurance kicked in, and they had some water damage through the roof. They also needed a new one because of all of the shingles that had come off / debris that had punctured it. My folks looked through roofing options and determined that a metal roof would be a great option to reduce damage / maintenance on their home. Plus, it would serve as a more energy efficient option with passive solar collection and fewer thermal losses in the summer / winter. It's more expensive, but my dad was basically our / personal finance incarnate while I was growing up. He's in his 60s and has finally concluded that he has fuck you money so long as that community is concerned, so the roof was a good investment. It looked like a win-win-win with that roof. Then they reviewed the HOA and saw that, as of 1989, metal roofs are prohibited in the neighborhood, subject to fines and mandatory removal. Reviewing the bylaw further showed that it was clearly referring to older, crappier tin roofs, not a proper metal one like today's market provides, which looks great and has all of those other benefits. My folks wanted to play by the rules, though, and called up the HOA to explain the situation. HOA was friendly and said that they would be looking into that bylaw and that my folks weren't the only ones who requested that they be allowed to have a metal roof. My parents couldn't get a roofing contractor in for a few months anyway, too much demand, since everyone else's roof got wrecked, so they waited a few weeks and got nothing new out of the HOA. Tried again a few weeks later. Nothing. After 2 months of this, they said fuck it and started construction on the metal roof. Popular opinion in the neighborhood was on their side, and the roof was covered with a tarp that wouldn't last forever. The new roof got installed over the course of a few days, and then we found out the HOA's shittiness. The neighborhood has a nice brick sign out front that says welcome to neighborhood name. It's very classy, very nice, and was very damaged in a hurricane. The HOA was strapped for money due to other repairs / dues, and some prick had the bright idea to impose as many fines as they could on the neighborhood to pay for these repairs, starting with my folks. They served my folks with a letter claiming that they were in violation of the HOA and demanded a $25,000 fine and that they remove it, which is, of course, absurd. My poor mother is very much a play by the rules sort, and she was worried sick. Dad's ex-Navy and a contract negotiator. He essentially checked his 60-year-old knuckles and said, "Oh, you little shits wanna play, do ya?" So they set about researching and making some calls. Poor mom kept waking up at 1 AM unable to sleep, and I felt terrible for her as she went through this. But then, they had a breakthrough. A few weeks after being served. I'm fuzzy on the timeline, since I don't live in Florida. It may have been less. There was essentially a burn them at the stake meeting of the HOA where my parents could defend themselves for an absurdly short amount of time, and the HOA could rip into them for daring to defy their wrath. So my mom, because she's more social / has a better temper than that, comes up to speak and lets the HOA know that they can't do this. HOA smirks and says that they sure can. They have a 40-year-old statute saying that they can. Mom says, "You do. But I have state law on my side, which supersedes your statute." Turns out, there's a law in Florida stating that an HOA, or really, any regulation, cannot be used to prevent or any eco-friendly improvement from taking place on anyone's private property. And wouldn't you know it, the passive solar of the metal roof counts as an eco-friendly improvement. Turns out, the roofing contractors had dealt with similar stuff before. When Dad mentioned what was going on to them, the contracting officer pulled out a few letters of accreditation and a few past cases where the court had determined that their product was eco-friendly and forced the hoer to pay all legal fees. My mom produced all of this for the shitty hoer, who had to admit that this was in fact ironclad. Strapped for money as they were, they couldn't afford to pay a lawyer. Hoer head growls, "Is that all?" Mom turns up the sweetness to 11. "No. I see in the bylaws that we can vote to impeach board members at any hoer meeting and to elect their replacements. I move to impeach all of you. I nominate my husband," and she rattles off a list of names. Hoer is stunned. While Dad looked into the legal, Mom looked into the new neighborhood. Popular opinion was on their side, and the hearing was public for the neighborhood. Mom convinced a majority of the homeowners to attend and remove the board for their crappy policy. With that, my parents are now on the all-new board, and Dad is putting his contract negotiation skills / own craftsmanship skills to work repairing the front entrance. And metal roofs are now allowed by the all-new hoer.